Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending today's event. My name is Corporal Brent Miller, and I'm the Director of the Communications Office with the Pennsylvania State Police. We are here today to provide an update on the national unemployment fraud currently impacting Pennsylvanians. Included in today's remarks will be helpful tips related to reporting fraudulent activity, identity theft, and information on current scams. The message today emphasizes the importance of staying vigilant and protecting your personal identification. Don't be afraid to speak up and report fraudulent activity. Our speakers today will begin with Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industry Secretary Jennifer Berrier, followed by Major Jeremy Richard, Director of the Bureau of Criminal Investigation with the Pennsylvania State Police, and finally Department of Banking and Securities Deputy Secretary for Financial Services Tim Arthen. We will then open the floor for questions. And now I'd like to turn the podium over to Secretary Berrier.
Thank you, Corporal Miller, and good morning, everyone. I am pleased to be joined here today with the Pennsylvania State Police, Major Richard, and the Department of Banking and Securities Deputy Secretary Arthen. I think it's really important that we're all here today because I think all of us know that when a disaster strikes, it is a prime time for fraudsters and scammers to come out of the woodwork and take advantage of a situation. And that has not been more true than with the COVID-19 pandemic. The federal government enacted additional unemployment compensation programs this last year in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And since that happened, every state has seen a surge in unemployment compensation fraud claims. Fraudsters are filing for fraudulently UC claims. These fraudsters are not hacking into labor and industry systems, and there is no breach of labor and industry's new unemployment compensation system. And I think this is really important to point out because there is a lot of misinformation going on out there right now. And I just want to repeat this. There has been no breach or hack of data within labor and industry or the new unemployment compensation system. As with other states, fraudsters are filing claims using stolen identity information. These stolen identities have occurred due to data breaches and hacks outside of state government. In fact, I think this is a really interesting statistic. Over the past 15 years, 11 million databases have been breached or hacked, exposing 1.6 billion records in the United States. These records contain confidential or personal data. And we've heard about these data breaches. These are the places we shop. These are the services we use. And oftentimes, we have no control over the data that these companies or organizations possess. It's very disappointing and scary that helpless individuals' addresses, social security numbers, and other personal data are being used against them. And we are seeing the ramifications of that stolen data now. We have intel that confidential data is being exchanged for money on the dark web, and it is being used by fraudsters around the world to file for unemployment compensation benefits in every single state in this country, including Pennsylvania. That is why we have extended our partnership with ID.me to verify the identity of all individuals filing for unemployment compensation. And we are also using this identity verification for existing claims for individuals who have been filing. Since the new UC system went live on June 8th, the Department of Labor and Industry has prevented over $1 billion from being paid to fraudsters. And this is using the things that we have in place within the new UC system that flag fraud. We will continue to partner with the National Unemployment Insurance Fraud Task Force, also with the FBI, the Pennsylvania State Police, the State Treasurer, and the State Attorney General's Office to identify and block new fraud methods and also to stop new fraud attempts. And this is a really good reminder to remain vigilant about fraud. Any of you who have had your info leaked in a data breach could become a victim of unemployment compensation fraud. So please be careful with your personal data and be careful where you share it and who you share it with. If you see something, say something. Whether it be someone who is filing for unemployment compensation benefits in your name, or if you see someone trying to coax personal data out of an individual. These are all different forms of trying to scam or fraud the system. We have additional information on our website, uc.pa.gov, where you can see warning signs of fraud and also details on how to report fraud. Also, we have information on how to return payment if you've received either a debit card or a UC check. So there's a lot of information out there, and I urge everyone to take advantage of the information that is out there because we want to stop this fraud in its tracks. There is no place for fraud in the unemployment compensation system, and labor and industry is taking all steps to ensure that that is the case. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Major Richard. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning. My name is Major Jeremy Richard. I'm the Director of the Bureau of Criminal Investigation here with the Pennsylvania State Police. Thank you, Secretary Berrier, for the introduction. I want to thank the Department of Labor and Industry, the Pennsylvania Department of Banking and Securities, and other distinguished guests and staff here today. No one thinks that a scam will happen to them, but we found that scammers don't discriminate. People hear about scams in the news and think about how could that happen to them? It seems so obvious. But the fact is that everyone is at risk. Today I'm here to affirm that the Pennsylvania State Police and our local, state, and federal law enforcement partners are committed to doing everything we can to protect you from the criminal threat from fraud, identity theft, and scams. We will investigate these malicious scams and do everything in our power to bring the responsible parties to justice. In order to successfully spoil the scammers' threats, we need our communities to prepare themselves and the vulnerable populations to identify potential scams and to report these efforts to your local law enforcement agencies. The most important things you can do to keep from falling victim to a scam is to recognize that it can happen to you. Remain suspicious of in-person solicitations, telephone calls, and emails outside of norms, and report these activities to the local law enforcement agencies. There are a number of recent criminal schemes that you should be aware of. The Department of Labor and Industry is seeing an increase in fraudulent attempts to apply for unemployment benefits using previously stolen identity information. This is a widespread issue affecting unemployment programs in every state and can affect children, retirees, workers, and legitimate claimants. Signs of unemployment compensation fraud include individuals receiving unrequested unemployment paperwork from the Department of Labor and Industry, individuals receiving unemployment benefit payments they did not apply for from the Pennsylvania Treasury, and employers receiving notice that a claim has been opened in a current employee's file that is actively working. Victims of fraud should report fraud to the Department of Labor and Industry through their website. File a police report with your local law enforcement agency and consider starting a recovery plan with the Federal Trade Commission. The state police is also seeing an increase in gift card scams. The scammer claims that the victim has a problem that must be solved immediately, and that payment and gift cards is the only acceptable payment method. Scammers utilize gift cards because they are widely available. They are untraceable, and only the information on the back of the card is needed to redeem it. Some examples of gift card scams are claims of problems such as outstanding warrants, tax debt, or utility bills. claims that a relative is visiting overseas and needs money to pay for hospital bills or bail, claims to be collecting gift cards for charity, promises of employment in exchange for payment, and requests sent by email or text from a friend requesting gift cards as a favor. Remember, government agencies do not accept gift cards for payment of taxes or other debts. If anyone claims to be collecting gift cards for a charity, contact the charity directly to verify the request. We could talk all day about the different types of schemes out there. The fact is, these scammers work relentlessly to find new ways to steal money from vulnerable victims. It's their full-time job, and it's definitely a crime that is underreported in our communities. Our message today is, be aware. Realize it can happen to you. And if you have become a victim, don't be embarrassed and report it to law enforcement. The Pennsylvania State Police works closely with our local, state, and federal law enforcement partners to investigate fraud, identity theft, and scams. And the sooner we know about the instance, the better our chances are of recovering your money and catching the scammers. Remember to also check in on the vulnerable populations, such as your elderly friends, neighbors, and loved ones, and discuss with them the trending scams. A prepared population supported by law enforcement can reduce the number of persons who fall victims to scams. Thank you. And now I'll turn the podium over to Department of Banking and Securities Deputy Secretary for Financial Services, Tim Arthun.
Good morning. Thank you, Secretary Berrier, Major Richard. With reports of identity theft rising everywhere, we want to make everyone aware of the red flags of scams and steps you can take to help prevent your information from being breached and safeguarding your financial data. Scam artists will always attempt to evoke an emotional response as part of their scam. Often this can be a sense of fear or urgency for something that will occur without an immediate response. Or they may try a more positive route with an offer of windfall of money or some other monetary benefit. If you receive an unsolicited call, email, or social media asking you to immediately act to obtain something of value or to prevent some negative event, that is a red flag, and you should be cautious. If it's something that seems very positive, remember, if it sounds too good to be true, it is. If the caller or emailer tells you to keep something a secret or otherwise indicates not to tell anyone, that is another red flag that is indicative of a scam. If you're presented with an offer for a no or low risk investment that is guaranteeing high returns, that is a red flag of an investment scam. When in doubt, don't be afraid to hang up the phone or to disengage from the person emailing you. If you receive an unexpected deposit in your bank account, contact your financial institution immediately. Always remember to keep your personal financial information protected. Your financial institution will never call or email you asking you to verify your account information, social security number, credit card number, or a one-time code sent to your phone. When contacting your financial institution, always refer to a phone number listed on the back of a card. Consumers should also be wary of various scams that seek the use of your bank account. Do not deposit or endorse a check from an individual you do not know or that has promised you a portion of those funds. Often the source of funds are illegitimate and you may be responsible for the full amount. When sending money online through peer-to-peer platforms, always verify the recipient and never provide your username and password to anyone. Scam emails are made to look and sound real. Never open an attachment or link from an unsolicited email, and never share financial or sensitive information with anyone before independently verifying the request. Freezing your credit is a step consumers can take to help prevent scammers from using your information to falsely open loans, credit cards, or lines of credit. You can contact the 3 credit reporting bureaus, Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax, to place a freeze as a step to protect your financial information. Regularly monitor your financial accounts and review your credit report to ensure the information is accurate. Consumers can currently request their credit report on a weekly basis from each of the reporting bureaus without any fee or cost. Consumers should visit annualcreditreport.com for their reports and should also be aware of copycat websites that attempt to steal their information. Anyone with questions can contact the Department of Banking toll-free at 1-800-PA-BANKS. With a few simple precautions, you can help detect and prevent scams from happening to you. Knowing the red flags of scams and pausing before action are important preventative steps. Too often, victims of frauds and scams are too embarrassed to report the crime. However, you are not helpless if you find yourself the victim of a scam, and you are not alone. Contacting the proper authorities and reporting it can save others from falling victim. Thank you, and I'll turn it back over to Corporal Miller.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Questions?
We're getting a lot of emails from people saying supporting press conference, people submitting the documentation, people not getting any response, they're not saying. What can you recommend at this point to people who have trouble or again?
So it is my understanding that there has been some hiccups with the ID.me identity verification, and it's because there's other state or federal agencies that use ID.me. So I think the problem is that users are creating new information through ID.me that's inconsistent with what's on file with ID.me currently that they may have used for another government agency. So this is a good time for me to issue a reminder that if you've used another federal government or state government service that utilizes ID.me, please log in using the same information that you used with that agency. If you don't recall the login information that you used for that agency, please go through the steps to retrieve your login information. There are ways to resolve that through the ID.me process. There are steps. Unfortunately, there are going to be some small delays, but this is what's necessary in order to prevent fraudsters from getting through and fraudulently collecting benefits. Currently, the backlog, I believe, is under 300,000 cases that we need to issue determinations for. The determinations could be the result of individuals refusing work, refusing to turn to work, or employers basically not agreeing with the reasons for the individual not working. So those require a little bit more fact-finding on our part. We are making progress with the implementation of the new UC system. I'm happy to report that we've actually been able to double what we've been able to put out in weekly determinations. So we are certainly beginning to make a big dent in that backlog, and I expect to see a lot of progress in the very near future. Absolutely. We are working through the oldest cases moving forward. It just really depends, because once we touch a case, there might might require actually additional follow-up. So not everything's cut and dry when you talk about the length of time for the backlogs, because there could be reasons for that. There could be further determination or further fact-finding that requires additional details from the employer or from some third party that we're trying to contact. So, these cases are very fact-intensive at times. The UC law can be quite complex. So, I ask these individuals to please bear with us. We are making a lot of progress right now, and we will continue to do so. We will not rest until all individuals who are eligible are paid their unemployment compensation claims. At this time, there's a lot of moving pieces to this identity theft and people filing fraudulent claims, because it's happening all across the state. It's happening nationally in every other state. So there's a lot of law enforcement efforts occurring right now with the federal government, the FBI, with state resources, the Pennsylvania State Police. So right now, I don't want to give you an inaccurate estimate, but I think once we come out the other side of this, we'll be able to give you a more accurate number on how many individuals, were victims of fraud. Sure. Pennsylvania reached a huge milestone by implementing its modernized UC system. This is something that we're the second largest state to do this. So this gained national attention, and unfortunately fraudsters were watching, and they were looking for an opportunity to see what they could get away with on our new system. Luckily, we had certain things in place within the new system that actually already filtered out a lot of those fraud attempts. And then this partnership with ID.me is just an additional step we are taking to show these fraudsters and scammers that we mean business. So ID.me, the intent was always to implement ID.me, but we were doing it in a phased-in approach for user friendliness. We know that asking users to learn a new system and adapt to the Keystone login part of the system, we didn't want to throw identity verification on them initially with rolling out this new system. So, we were able to tack it on approximately a month and a half later after people got used to using the system. And we really just wanted to make sure, the most important thing to us is paying out UC claimants, and we wanted to make sure that was clear when we rolled out the new system.
Just to verify your question, because so if we receive a claim from someone who's out of state,
If somebody is in Pennsylvania and they receive a claim from another state, because it's not Pennsylvania.
so then you're saying that the fraud potentially occurs in another state. So we would more than likely refer that to the state agency in that state. Well, I think the secretary spoke to that. I certainly wouldn't. And from a law enforcement standpoint, as I suggested in my comments earlier, the Pennsylvania State Police, we do cover we are the largest police agency in the state of Pennsylvania, but there are local partners that also investigate these crimes. So to give an estimate from our standpoint would not be an accurate number in any fashion. So again, the secretary's probably a better person to ask that question. I can tell you, that we are aware of the FBI's involvement. We're also obviously aware that we're investigating many claims, as well as other local law enforcement agencies.
apply for unemployment but receive a check or a card at your residence, you go, wait a minute, I didn't apply for this. What's a scam or hope to gain from that? It seems like they're not going to get the money. So why do? What do they hope to gain from that situation?
Again, the secretary is probably a better person to answer that question.
Unfortunately, these fraudsters are very savvy, and while many times we see their attempts are thwarted by an individual collecting the debit card or the check at their home, there are instances where people actually collect the check out of someone's mailbox. There are instances where they go into the account and change it to direct deposit information for a bank account in the scammer's name. So, there's many different ways that these individuals, commit a crime. So, they'll just keep trying until they hit something.
For a person in that case, should they be concerned that this is going to go further than that, or like this is the end of it? Like, I caught it, put an end to it, I've contacted all the appropriate people, and this is the end of it.
My advice is to remain vigilant. Remain vigilant if you are the victim of identity theft and unemployment compensation fraud.
Is fraud slowing down the handling?
Let me frame it this way. If we didn't have to deal with fraud, all of those resources that we put towards fighting fraud would go towards processing cases. So there is some impact, which makes this crime even more despicable because it prevents us from getting money into the hands of individuals who desperately need that money.
Sorry, I was a little late, so I don't know if this question was asked, but I've spoken to a lot of people receiving unemployment compensation who believe they are victims of fraud or hacking attempts, and they're saying that they're sitting without checks right now as the state is working to clear up their fraud cases, but they're not getting paid in the meantime. What is your advice to those people, and how long is it taking to clear up those fraud cases so the legitimate person actually does get paid and isn't sitting there worried about their bills?
So my advice is to report it immediately. If you are a current UC claimant and you have stopped receiving your money, but you are still filing and you think that you are the victim of fraud, report it to us immediately. I know right now with individuals who are filing fraud reports, we are handling them as quickly as possible, and we're also doing that in conjunction with the state treasurer's office since they're responsible for making the actual payments. So this is a coordinated effort. I encourage everyone who feels that they may be the victim of fraud to go on our website. We have extensive FAQs, and we can direct you where to go depending on what you think is being committed.
Anybody else for today? Okay.
Is there a way people can check with the Department of Labor to see if
So the best way to know if you are a victim of unemployment compensation fraud is that you will receive notification from the department, and so will your employer. You'll receive that in the form of a letter. There is no way at this time to check to see if you are the victim of fraud. I encourage individuals to look on our website, uc.pa.gov, as we do put up some warning signs that may indicate you are a victim of fraud. So, the system, the new UC system is more streamlined and user-friendly. I think any system is capable of being fraudulently, used. So, for me to answer that question is a bit unfair because I think that capability exists anywhere. These fraudsters are savvy. They're constantly changing the ways that they do their attacks, and it behooves us to make sure that we are current on the new attempts that are being made and the new technology that's being used to commit fraud. Yes, anyone who is filing for unemployment compensation, who is eligible and who has been receiving money, please continue to file for your weeks. We will assist you as quickly as possible.
And then
There are a lot of federal efforts at this time. Federal Department of Labor has acknowledged that this is a national problem. In fact, they're in the process of giving out funding to each state to combat these fraud attempts, and I think this will continue to gain national attention.
You're an employer who's, a number of employees have said, hey, I'm a victim of fraud. What advice do you have to businesses or employers as far as these fraudulent claims go? What should they do?
That's a good question.
So on the unemployment compensation end, the employers through our new system do have access to the site. We have detailed instructions on our website on how employers can report fraud if they discover that they perhaps have an individual who currently works for them who is collecting unemployment, or if there's somebody that doesn't work for them who is collecting unemployment trying to collect unemployment under the guise of their employment. They can log into our system and report it right away through the system that individual, number one, doesn't work for them, or number two, that individual is still working.
How is that information put out there? And I asked because the employer that we spoke with said they get the report from the state. I don't know if it's more available information. So is that a more accessible way to just wait for the report?
Actually, we've been sending out directed emails to employers weekly. We've also been posting a lot of information on social media. So I urge employers to open up any emails that they may have from the Department of Labor and Industry, because we are constantly proactively putting out information to guide them on how to address this situation.
Anything else, Sarah?
So, earlier I announced that we have continued our partnership with ID.me so that we can put extra features in place to prevent this fraud from occurring within our unemployment compensation system. And we will continue to look into different ways that fraud is happening and monitor the dark web so that we know what we need to change so that we can one-up these fraudsters and get ahead of them. Sarah, I believe we already answered that question.
All right. What are the most important steps to use to prevent fraud?
So I think one of the most important steps to prevent your information from being stolen is not to give out your username or password. I think we're all kind of accustomed to keeping that close to us, but treating it like cash, because once somebody else has it, it's theirs. And so looking at things like strong passwords, changing them frequently is a good deterrent for that type of activity. Constantly checking your credit report is a very good step, because oftentimes these fraudsters will try to open a credit card or some other activity, and that will show up on your credit report. And so that's a way where you can know if maybe your information is being used fraudulently. And maintaining vigilance. Anytime you get something that is unsolicited, just keeping in the back of your mind, what is the motivation behind this? Am I expecting this phone call? What are they asking me for? And just being able to kind of stop and pause before giving out any type of sensitive information.
All right, thank you everybody for attending. That will conclude the press conference today.